The Last Letter, A Dialogue Beyond the Grave. Chapter 1, The Weight of an Envelope. Savannah, Georgia, 2024. The air in Savannah hung heavy with the scent of magnolias and ancient secrets, a city where time seemed to move slower, where history whispered from every moss-draped live oak. For me, Clara Matthews, a quiet librarian in my late 40s, life had settled into a comfortable, if somewhat solitary, rhythm. My days were filled with the hushed rustle of turning pages, the quiet pursuit of knowledge, and the comforting solitude of my small, historic home on Jones Street. My life had always been one of careful order, a contrast to the tumultuous, passionate relationship I had shared, briefly, intensely, 25 years ago, with a man named Ethan Hayes. Ethan, the name still carried a faint echo of longing, a bittersweet pang. We had met at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, during our senior year. He was an aspiring journalist, brilliant, restless, with eyes that saw the world in vivid color, and a laugh that could make you forget every worry. I was drawn to his chaotic energy, his profound curiosity, his fierce sense of justice. We had fallen deeply in love, a whirlwind romance that burned bright and fast. We had dreams, big dreams, of traveling the world, writing stories, changing lives. But life, as it often does, had other plans. Our paths diverged abruptly after graduation. He chased a story to war-torn regions, a dangerous, impulsive choice I couldn't understand or accept. I, pragmatic and risk-averse, chose stability, a quiet career, a life less fraught with peril. A misunderstanding, a heated argument, a fundamental difference in our outlook on life, and we broke apart. No dramatic farewells, just a slow, painful drifting. We never spoke again. I heard snippets of his life over the years. Award-winning journalist, correspondent from dangerous locales, always chasing the next big story. He was living the life we had once dreamed of, but without me. I never married, never had children. My life became defined by books, by the solace of stories. I told myself I was content, but a part of me, a small, quiet part, always wondered about Ethan. What if? What if we had found a way? Then the envelope arrived. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope, surprisingly heavy, addressed in an elegant, familiar script that sent a jolt through me. No return address, just a Boston, Massachusetts postmark, dated 2 days prior. My hands trembled slightly as I picked it up from my mailbox. It was unmistakably Ethan's handwriting. My heart began to pound with a frantic, unbidden hope. After 25 years of silence, why now? Was he finally reaching out? Had he, perhaps, thought of me all these years, just as I had thought of him? I brought the letter inside, placing it on my antique writing desk, unwilling to open it immediately. It felt too momentous, too fragile. It sat there, a silent, potent presence, radiating decades of unspoken words. I debated. Should I even open it? What if it brought pain? What if it was a final goodbye? Or what if it was a reconciliation, a second chance? The possibilities, both exhilarating and terrifying, swirled in my mind. I decided to wait until the evening, to savor the anticipation, to prepare myself for whatever lay within. I went about my day at the library, but my mind was miles away, consumed by the simple, cream-colored envelope waiting for me at home. That evening, as the Savannah twilight cast long shadows across my living room, I finally sat down at my desk. My hands, still trembling, carefully slit open the envelope. Inside, a thick stack of pages, meticulously handwritten, in that same elegant script. It was a long letter, clearly. My heart swelled with a mix of trepidation and profound hope. I took a deep breath, unfolded the first page, and began to read. Just as my eyes fell upon his familiar words, just as his voice seemed to echo in my mind, my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. I hesitated, then answered, my voice a little breathless. "Hello? Is this Clara Matthews?" a somber female voice asked. "Yes, it is," I replied, my gaze still fixed on the letter in my hand. "This is Sarah Davies, from the New York Tribune," the voice said, formal and apologetic. "I'm calling to inform you of some tragic news. We know you had a professional and personal relationship with Ethan Hayes many years ago. I'm afraid he passed away yesterday morning. A sudden heart attack in his Boston apartment. We found your address among his personal effects, marked Send Last Correspondence. We wanted to make sure you were notified." My hand, holding the phone, dropped to my lap. The letter, half read, lay open on the desk. Ethan. Dead. Yesterday morning. The postmark. The letter he sent was truly a last correspondence. He had written to me, poured out his heart, then died before I ever knew. Before I had a chance to reply, before I had a chance to say anything. The hope, the longing, the dreams of a second chance, they all shattered, replaced by a cold, numbing grief. The weight of that envelope, once so full of promise, now felt like a stone, heavy with unspoken words, with a dialogue that had begun too late and ended before it had truly begun. The last letter. It was a message from beyond the grave, and I was left with a profound, agonizing silence and 1,000 questions screaming in my heart. Chapter 2. A confession from the past. The news of Ethan's death, delivered so cruelly, just as I held his last letter, ripped through me like a storm. The hope that had bloomed so unexpectedly, so late, withered into an agonizing grief. He had died yesterday morning in Boston, Massachusetts, leaving behind a letter that was truly a final, poignant farewell from beyond the grave. I spent the next few days in a fog, the world around me in Savannah, Georgia, muted and indistinct. The scent of magnolias seemed to mock my sorrow. I barely ate, barely slept. The letter lay open on my desk, a silent testament to a conversation that had begun too late. Finally, driven by a desperate need to understand, to connect with the ghost of a lost love, I returned to the letter. It was meticulously written, page after page, in his distinctive, confident hand. It was a confession, a life story, and a profound apology. He began by recounting his life as a journalist, the thrilling, dangerous pursuit of truth across the globe. He wrote of the adrenaline, the satisfaction, but also the profound loneliness, the constant danger, the sacrifices. He detailed his assignments in Afghanistan, Syria, Ukraine, the raw reality of human suffering he had witnessed. He had won awards, gained renown, but at what cost? Then he turned to me. His words were raw, honest, filled with regret. He spoke of our time at Emory University in Atlanta, the naive, passionate love we shared. He acknowledged his impulsiveness, his youthful arrogance, his inability to compromise. He confessed that leaving me, choosing a life of perilous adventure over the stability I craved, had been his greatest regret. Clara, he wrote, I've carried you with me in every dusty village, every bombed-out city, every quiet moment under a foreign sky. Your pragmatism, your steady heart, was what I needed, what I foolishly rejected. I always believed I had to prove something, to myself, to the world. But in chasing the world, I lost my grounding. I lost us. He detailed years of quiet yearning, of wanting to reach out, but always hesitating. I saw your name sometimes, in librarian journals, in local news from Savannah. You built the life you wanted, a good life, a stable life, and I was always too proud, too ashamed of the path I'd chosen, to intrude on your peace. He revealed that he had recently been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive heart condition. It was degenerative, untreatable. He had known, for months, that his time was limited. He had retired from journalism, moved to Boston, Massachusetts, to a quiet apartment overlooking the Charles River, wanting to spend his final days in peace, reflecting on his life. I faced my mortality, Clara, he wrote, his words growing more poignant. And in facing it, I realized my biggest failing wasn't a story I missed or a battle I didn't cover. It was you. It was us. I should have fought for you. I should have come back. I should have put our love before my restless spirit. He wrote of the comfort he found in his final days, in the simple act of writing this letter. It's my final confession, my last act of courage to tell you unequivocally that you were the love of my life, that I never stopped loving you, that I wish I had chosen differently. The last few paragraphs were almost unbearable. I don't know if you'll ever read this, Clara. I don't know if you'll forgive me, but I had to say it, to clear my conscience, to honor what we had. Please, know that I die with your memory in my heart, and with profound regret for the future we never shared. May you find happiness, always. Yours, Ethan. His signature, bold and familiar, was followed by a date, the day before his death. He had poured out his heart, then released his last breath. Tears streamed down my face, hot and cleansing. The letter was a profound gift, an impossible dialogue. He had reached out. He had confessed. He had loved me, still. But the timing was a cruel twist of fate. He was gone, and I was left with his truth and my own unsent replies. A lifetime of what-ifs, amplified by the finality of death. But something shifted within me as I read the final words. A peace, fragile but real, began to settle. He had spoken. He had found his courage even in death. And now it was my turn. He might be gone, but his words were here, and I could still, somehow, answer. The confession from the past was not just an ending. It was an invitation to a dialogue beyond the grave, a chance to finally, impossibly, bridge the 25-year silence. Chapter 3. A dialogue beyond the veil. The raw, heartbreaking confession from Ethan, delivered hours after his death, ignited a profound need within me to respond. He was gone, his physical presence lost forever, but his words, so full of regret and unspoken love, demanded an answer. The letter from Boston, Massachusetts, was not merely a final farewell. It was an unfinished conversation, a dialogue spanning 25 years of silence. I sat at my antique writing desk in Savannah, Georgia, surrounded by the comforting scent of old paper and dust motes dancing in the sunlight. I pulled out my finest stationery, uncapped my favorite fountain pen, and began to write. It felt both utterly absurd and profoundly necessary. I was writing to a ghost, to a memory, to a man who would never read my words, yet the act itself was a powerful ritual of healing. My first letter to Ethan was a torrent of emotion. I poured out my own grief, my own regrets. I told him how his disappearance from my life had left a void, how I had thought of him often, how the dream of our Brooklyn design studio had haunted me. I confessed my own pride, my inability to bridge the gap when we had diverged, my fear for his adventurous, dangerous life. "Ethan," I wrote, my hand trembling slightly, "your letter found me at the precise moment your spirit left this world. It was a cruel twist of fate, a profound agony. But know this, I forgave you long ago. I understood even then that your restless spirit was part of what I loved, and I never stopped loving you either." I described my life in Savannah, my quiet solace among books, my work as a librarian. I told him about the beauty of Forsyth Park, the peace of Bonaventure Cemetery, places he would have loved to photograph, places where his vibrant curiosity would have found endless inspiration. I tried to bridge the gap between our two lives, the life we built and the life we lost. I finished that first letter, sealed it, and placed it in a box on my desk, a symbolic act of sending it into the ether, into the space where he now resided. And then I wrote another, and another, and another. It became a daily ritual. Every morning, I would sit down and write to Ethan. Some days the letters were long, filled with detailed accounts of my day, my thoughts, my memories of him. Other days they were short, just a few lines of wistful longing, a question posed to the silence. It was a dialogue that only I could hear, a conversation with the ghost of my past. I shared my life with him, the small triumphs at the library, the challenges of managing old collections, the joy of recommending a perfect book to a patron. I told him about the changing seasons in Savannah, the vibrant azaleas in spring, the oppressive humidity of summer, the cool relief of autumn. I wrote about Emily, our little girl, the very same Emily from earlier chapters. I told him about the funny things she said, her mischievous nature. My children knew of Ethan only through old photographs and my wistful stories. I told him about her growth, her dreams, how she embodied so much of the light he once carried. I reflected on our past, re-examining our arguments, our decisions, with the clarity that 25 years and profound grief can bring. I wrote about the pain of that final argument, the lingering resentment, and how his letter had finally, truly, healed those old wounds. This dialogue with the dead was not about denial or delusion. It was a form of active remembrance, a process of honoring a love that had ended too soon, too abruptly. It was a way to process my grief, to finally say all the things I never had the chance to say. It was therapy, a dialogue of the soul. I never mailed these letters. They were for me. They filled boxes on my desk, a growing archive of an impossible conversation. One day, several months into this ritual, I received an unexpected visitor. It was Sarah Davies, the reporter from the New York Tribune, who had called me about Ethan's death. She was in Savannah covering a story and had decided to stop by. "I just wanted to make sure you were okay, Miss Matthews," she said, her voice soft. "Ethan spoke of you often, even recently. He really admired you." I invited her in. We sat and talked for hours, sharing memories of Ethan. She told me stories of his bravery, his relentless pursuit of truth, his quiet moments of introspection between dangerous assignments. She painted a fuller picture of the man he had become, a man I only knew through news headlines. "He truly regretted losing you," she said, her eyes kind. "He carried that regret for a very long time. Writing that letter to you, even knowing he might not live to see a reply, was incredibly important to him. It was his final act of peace." Her words validated my ritual, my dialogue beyond the veil. It wasn't just my grief speaking. It was a continuation of a profound connection, acknowledged even by those who knew him best. The last letter from Ethan had been a confession, a testament to enduring love. My response, a continuous dialogue across the chasm of death, became a testament to enduring connection, a bridge built between two lives, two timelines, finally finding a profound, if unspoken, understanding. The dialogue beyond the grave was not just a symbol of closure. It was a living, breathing testament to a love that, even in silence, had found its voice. Chapter 4: Echoes and Reflections. The dialogue with Ethan, through my unsent letters, continued for years. It became less about immediate grief and more about a quiet, ongoing reflection. My antique writing desk in Savannah, Georgia, piled high with my handwritten pages, became a sanctuary, a place where the boundaries between life and death seemed to blur, where a profound love could still exist and evolve. I found a unique peace in this ritual. It allowed me to process not just Ethan's death, but the entirety of our relationship, the what-ifs, the heartbreaks, the enduring affection. It was a way to keep his memory alive, not as a source of pain, but as a quiet guiding presence. My life continued to unfold. I became the head librarian at the Savannah Public Library, a role I cherished. My children grew, embarked on their own lives, though they remained a constant source of joy and grounding. They understood, in their own way, the significance of my writing time, a quiet ritual they respected without fully comprehending. I often revisited Ethan's last letter, rereading his words, tracing his elegant script. Each time, I found new layers of meaning, new depths of his regret and his unwavering love. It felt like an ongoing conversation, a silent exchange that deepened with time. I realized that his desire to send that letter, even as he faced death, was not just for him, but for me. It was a gift of truth, an opportunity for my own closure, a chance to finally articulate my unspoken feelings. Through this dialogue, I also found myself growing. I became more compassionate, more empathetic, more willing to embrace the unpredictable currents of life. Ethan's restless spirit, once a source of conflict, now inspired a quiet courage within me. I started to travel, venturing beyond Savannah, exploring places he had once dreamed of visiting. Bringing a piece of him with me to each new landscape, I visited the Grand Canyon, stood at the edge of its vastness, imagining his journalist's eye capturing its majesty. I walked the streets of Paris, France, envisioning him finding stories in every cafe. These journeys were not about escaping, but about expanding, about living a fuller life, acknowledging the influence of a man who, though gone, continued to shape me. I also made an effort to connect with others who had known Ethan. I reached out to Sarah Davies, the reporter who had notified me of his death. We met periodically, sharing stories, piecing together a fuller picture of Ethan's remarkable, complicated life. Through her, I learned more about his friendships, his struggles, his triumphs. It allowed me to love him and mourn him as the complex, whole person he was, not just the idealized memory of our youth. My letters to Ethan accumulated. Boxes filled, then another set began. They were a tangible record of my journey, a testament to an enduring connection that defied physical boundaries. One rainy afternoon, as I was sitting at my desk, pen in hand, a thought occurred to me. These letters, this dialogue, it wasn't just for me. It was a story, a testament to a unique form of grief, love, and connection. Perhaps it was a story that could offer solace to others. A way to show that love and communication can transcend even death. I began to compile my letters, along with Ethan's last one, into a manuscript. It was a raw, deeply personal undertaking. I wrote about the pain of his death, the shock of receiving his letter, and the profound, transformative journey of writing back to him, day after day, year after year. I included excerpts from his letter and my own replies, careful to maintain the intimacy while shaping it into a narrative. It was a daunting task, exposing such a private, vulnerable part of myself to the world. But I felt a quiet compulsion, a sense that Ethan, the journalist, the storyteller, would have wanted his last words to be part of a larger narrative, a narrative of enduring love and the power of unspoken connections. I finished the manuscript, titled it The Last Letter, A Dialogue Beyond the Grave, and, with trembling hands, sent it to a literary agent in New York City. I expected nothing. But a few weeks later, I received an email. The agent was deeply moved. She saw its potential. The book was eventually published. It wasn't a bestseller, but it resonated with a quiet, dedicated audience. Readers wrote to me, sharing their own stories of lost loves, of unspoken words, of finding unique ways to cope with grief. The book became a beacon for those who felt alone in their sorrow, a testament to the idea that love truly does transcend boundaries. My silent dialogue with Ethan, once a private act of mourning, had become a public testimony to the enduring power of human connection, a profound echo that resonated far beyond the confines of my quiet Savannah home. The letters, once meant for a ghost, had found an audience, creating a new, unexpected legacy, a final, profound reflection on a love that refused to be silenced, even by death. Chapter 5: The Unending Conversation. Years flowed by, marked by the changing seasons in Savannah, Georgia, and the ever-growing collection of letters in the antique boxes on my desk. The last letter found its quiet place in the world, becoming a source of solace for many, and for me, a testament to the enduring power of a love that had defied time and death. My life as the head librarian at the Savannah Public Library continued to thrive. I found immense satisfaction in connecting people with stories, guiding them through the labyrinth of human knowledge and emotion. My children, now adults, had built their own lives, but our bond remained strong, enriched by the shared understanding of my unique journey of grief and connection. The correspondence with Sarah Davies, Ethan's former colleague, also continued intermittently. She would occasionally send me updates on the journalism world, subtle reminders of the life Ethan had lived. These small connections kept his memory, and the man he became, alive in my mind. But the most profound continuation of my dialogue with Ethan remained my daily ritual of writing. It was no longer fueled by raw grief, but by a deeper, more mature love. I wrote about the quiet moments, the way the light fell through the Spanish moss outside my window, the sound of the rain on the tin roof, the scent of fresh-baked bread from a nearby bakery. I shared my thoughts on the books I read, the insights I gained, the simple joys and sorrows of everyday life. It was an unending conversation, a testament to the idea that love, in its purest form, can create a space where even the departed remain present, where dialogue can transcend the physical realm. Ethan's last letter had opened a portal, and my responses had kept it open, allowing a channel of communication, however one-sided, to exist between us. I reflected often on the irony of it all. The man who had chased stories in war zones, who thrived on chaos and immediate impact, had, in his dying days, chosen to send a quiet, handwritten letter, seeking a connection that was anything but fleeting. And I, the quiet librarian, had found my greatest story, my most profound narrative, in a dialogue with a ghost. My book, The Last Letter, A Dialogue Beyond the Grave, continued to find new readers, resonating with those who grappled with loss and longing. I received letters from people around the world, sharing their own experiences of writing to deceased loved ones, of finding comfort in impossible conversations. It created a quiet community, bound by shared grief and the belief in enduring connections. I often visited Ethan's grave in the quiet green hills of a Boston cemetery. I would sit for hours, not speaking, but simply feeling his presence, the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, the silent understanding that passed between us. I never placed my letters on his grave. They were for me, for my healing. But the silent vigil was its own form of conversation, a quiet continuation of our profound bond. Life had given me a unique gift, the chance to say goodbye, to reconcile, to speak my heart, even after death had intervened. Ethan's last letter had been a profound act of love and regret. My answering letters had been an act of unwavering love, forgiveness, and an ongoing testament to a connection that transcended the bounds of life. The unspoken dialogue had become the most important conversation of my life. It was a reminder that love doesn't end with a final breath, that connection can persist in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the most profound answers come not from a living voice, but from the echoes of a past love, patiently waiting to be heard, and finally answered. The conversation with Ethan, the man who sent a letter and died the next day, would continue, an unending testament to a love that, though silent, remained eternally alive.